And this is a particularly exciting solution. It is the graduate of predictive intelligence for customer service management. So you're going to see very exciting updated model, more out-of-box capabilities, and just a lot of value to deliver to your customers. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to two of my esteemed colleagues, Andre and Alexandra, to go ahead and kick it off. So Andre, do you want to go ahead and get us started?
Absolutely. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Andre Ramsarran. I'm an outbound PM for our customer service management group. I oversee task intelligence, WFO, and some other product capabilities. And Alexandra, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Alexandra Elston, and I am a staff software engineer for customer service management.
All right, so we'll get rolling. Let's go to the next slide. We'll just start with a brief, go back to the safe harbor. If we talk about any forward-looking functionality, we will call that out on either verbally or on the slides. So just a quick safe harbor statement on that. Next slide, please. So when we're talking about task intelligence for customer service, from a product perspective, this is supported in our Tokyo release, and the assumption would be that you would have some type of pro level licensing. Next slide, please. So what is task intelligence? The way that I like to think about task intelligence is that it's going to help you automate the different aspects of your case lifecycle, and this will speed up resolution with respect to support workflows. So when we think about the case lifecycle, there are kind of 5 steps in the case lifecycle. Step number 1 is what we call creation. So this is where you may be intaking work, let's say from a portal, from a chat, from an email, etc. And what we want to be able to assist with here is with optimizing the routing. So perhaps we're predicting things like the language or a topic or sentiment, or in the future, we might be predicting duplicates or spam or things of those nature. The second area that we often impact is what we call self-service. So this is where your goal is to drive deflection. And in the future, we're going to be offering functionality in this area. So this is going to be to help automate response, perhaps via KBIA articles, or to proactively recommend case resolution, or etc. The next step, step number 3, there's 2 areas here. There's what we call the triage and handoff. So that would be the situation in which there's other teams that are involved in the support process. And then, of course, there's resolution. And where task intelligence impacts here is we're going to improve agent productivity. So by auto-categorizing, let's say, a case, or by extracting values from an attachment and inserting them onto the case form, or even recommending similar knowledge-based articles or similar cases, we can help drive and streamline that agent productivity. And then the final pillar here is after the case has been resolved, how do you optimize your operations in an ongoing manner? And this is areas where we might be able to identify, let's say, gaps in knowledge, or perhaps using capabilities like process optimization, look at root cause analysis. So seeing where there is breaches that are occurring or bottlenecks in the support process, and just to overall identify opportunities for downstream automation. So when we think about how does task intelligence play in the overall customer service landscape, you can think of it from this perspective, from this case lifecycle perspective. So let's have a double click on this a little bit and look at the specific capabilities that we're going to talk about today. The first capability is sentiment analysis, where is the ability to detect customer sentiment using AI. So this is the ability to detect the initial customer sentiment as well as their trending sentiment as perhaps they go through the case lifecycle. So we are leveraging pre-trained AI models to detect that additional sentiment. And when we also detect their change in sentiment, that may also trigger some downstream action. So perhaps it may trigger the escalation of a case, or the reprioritization of a case, or maybe even agent coaching, right? So if an agent is handling a case and it starts off positive, but then it starts going very negative, perhaps that is an opportunity for agent coaching as well. And from a higher level perspective, service owners can prioritize which areas, which product areas and service areas they may need to improve based on overall sentiment across their segment of customers. Next slide, please. Document intelligence is another exciting capability in task intelligence. So this is the ability to extract field values from attachments. We won't go into this too much today, but because it has been covered in other academy sessions, but it is a very exciting and new capability within task intelligence. Next slide, please. Case categorization. So case categorization and language detection, this is a capability that we're going to be looking at in depth today. And this is the ability to interrogate an attachment, let's say, that comes in on a case, and then use that to predict certain field values on the case form. So perhaps you're interrogating an attachment, let's say an invoice, and you're saying that this invoice is to go to the billing support group as an example, or that this invoice is going to Spanish support as another example. So having that ability to analyze an attachment and use that to predict field values can once again help automate routing. So for a lot of organizations, they have multiple inboxes and many routing rules. Case categorization is going to really help reduce the complexity and the administrative overhead associated with that. Next slide, please. And admin console. So admin console pulls it all together. So in the past, it may have been more difficult for an admin or developer to kind of set up AI and task intelligence because there was multiple places within the application that you had to go. So we brought it all together in the admin console. And what this enables you to do is to rapidly configure, train, and deploy your AI solutions. And really, this puts it in the hands of a business analyst type of persona, as opposed to strictly an admin developer type of persona. It's a very guided methodology for setting up the different models that we offer on the platform. And for a lot of organizations, this is going to help them reduce that deployment anxiety associated with rolling out an AI solution. You will also have the ability to decide when you want to move from, let's say, recommended field values to auto-filled field values. So you can do the crawl, walk, run type of approach. And lastly, you're going to be able to directly measure the hard dollar business impact of deploying these AI solutions. So let's say that you roll out something like case categorization. You will be able to say, hey, this resulted in 720 minutes of saving per month, as an example, and have a real hard dollar value calculation that you could take back to your business stakeholders to prove the value of these solutions. So with that said, I will hand it over to Alexandra.
Thank you, Andre. So let's first understand the task intelligence admin vision for this exercise. The goal is to drive agent productivity by helping them to first save time. Recommending the category field and predicting priority for all cases using the case's short description and description will guide the agent in the right direction. 2, prioritize. Predicting the case's sentiments will help the agent to act accordingly. And 3, improve routing. Predicting the language skill for the case and integrating this prediction with advanced work assignment will route the case to the right agent. So we have a lot to cover in this exercise, and we will focus in 3 steps. First, the agent experience with task intelligence. Then we will set up task intelligence. And finally, we will get a glance of task intelligence analytics. So let's begin by seeing task intelligence in action in the agent experience. So what we have here is we have in our left side, we have our consumer. He is ready to send a case. In the right side, we have our agents. In the top part, we have John, who speaks English. And in the bottom, we have Ned, they speak Spanish. Now, if I send this case now from my consumer, what task intelligence is doing right now is predicting the category field, the priority field, the language, doing the routing based on the language, and even when we are not going to be touching much on it today, we have document intelligence set up to extracting the vendor from the attachment of this case. So let's see how the agent experienced this. If he accepts this case, what we are going to see is first, we can see how the task skill was added to the case. So the English skill was required for this case, and that is the reason for why he was assigned to it. If we look into the details, you can see how the priority has been predicted and the category has been recommended, which is a different behavior. When we predict, we save the value in the case. When we recommend, we will just display it to the agent for them to take actions. We can see in the left side as well, we have the language because we decided to put it on the case form 2. And in the right side, you see how the current sentiment is negative for this case. So let's say that this agent wants to reply to this case. And we are going to make a comment saying, please disconnect the router for 3 seconds and try again. We are going to post this comment so that our consumer can see that. If you notice, sentiment is not being recalculated. That is because we don't predict sentiment in agents' comments. We just do it in the customer or consumer. So let's check how that looks for him. Our consumer has gotten the comment from our agent. After he tries, he realized that that is working, and he is going to be making a comment saying, thank you, finally it works. He will send that to our agent. And our agent now can see how the current sentiment is positive, and he can see as well the sentiment over time is improving. So the last piece of this is, if you notice in the top part, there is a review in Docintel. So that means that our case has an attachment and we are able to work on it. So if we look at it, right now it's saying that in this moment is still extracting the values. So it will be available to the agent later on. But if he cannot wait, he can work on it right now. So let's say, no, I can wait. So this is in general how the agent is seeing that interaction. Now, this is about how the agent works, but what about the admin? So let's invite the admin to our screen. And the first thing I want you to notice is when the admin is working in these cases, they can as well use something that is called the assignment workbench. So let's think in a case that was written in Spanish. If they want to use the assignment workbench, then just agents that match that skill will be presented to them. That is because we are saying that the Spanish skill is mandatory. So with that, we kind of conclude the agent side of it and how task intelligence interact with it. So let's think how our admin is going to be setting all this up. We will navigate to task intelligence, and we will go to the setup portion of it. Let's maximize this so it's a little bit more clear for us. So this is our admin console. This is where the admin will be interacting with how to set up the models. In the top part, you always will have a performance live. So it will be showing you the predictions that has been done in the last 7 days. You can split it by each of the models so you can see that performance being live. Now, on the right side, on the task intelligence admin console, you have help. And this will be consistent in all the exercise. You will see how that is really useful. In the middle section, we have any model that you have deployed. In this case, we have the language, the sentiment, and the categorization, as we mentioned. And in the bottom side, you will have the cards that you can use to be able to set up each of these models. So for categorization, or for sentiment, or for language. In this instance, we have everything set up, but I really want us having the flavor of how all this is being set up in Task Intelligence Admin Console. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be deleting the solution, and we can redo it together. If you notice, when a model has been deployed, you can edit the model, you can export the model, which it is an important function when you have a model that is performing really well in an instance and you want to move it to a next one. You always can export and import the model in the new instance for you to work on. And finally, we can delete a model. So let's go ahead and delete the language. Now, how we set it up? So we will go to the language card, we will say set up model, and here we are. In the left side, you will have the steps that you need to take for setting up a model. In the right side, you have the help. So the first one is testing your model. The reason why we are testing language detection, and this is the same for sentiment, is because we have pre-trained models. We don't need your data to be trained to be able to predict languages. And as you can see, we are predicting 20 languages.
Quick question for you on that. So the 20 languages that are supported in sentiment analysis are also supported in case categorization, or what's the story there?
Yes, that is a really good point, Andre. Thank you. The first thing is these 20 languages are for language detection. For sentiment, we support just English. And for categorization, out of the box, we have 4 languages. There is French, Spanish, German, and English. If there are other languages that we can support, but for those, you will need to contact ServiceNow. Thank you for the question. So now, anytime that you have a question, like for example, the one that Andre has, you always can click and explain this. Explain this will bring you to the right side. It will bring you a more detailed help of the step that you are taking. So for the model name for language is already set up for you. You don't need to change it because like we say, it's pre-trained. Now, in this session, we will be choosing up to 100 cases to be able to do a testing. So give you a flavor of how the predictions work. So for example, I'm going to say I want to choose 100 cases for this that has been created after, I don't know, last month. So I'm going to launch that. And like I say, in this moment, it's doing testing, it's not doing training. The whole point of this exercise is making you feel comfortable with the predictions. So in the top part is telling you how many predictions were done for cases in that period of time. In the bottom side, what you have is that sample of cases that you can, that we have predicted. So if you want to have a little bit more an idea of what that prediction went, so you can click on the case, you then will be able to see the short description and the description that generate that prediction. And the whole point is feel comfortable, make sure that those predictions are matching what do you expect for this model. Once you feel comfortable, you will go back, you will save and continue. Now it's time to set your preference. This is a really important step of the process. You will notice there are 2 main points. The first one, you can use predictions in new cases, which means this can affect your case or case form. And in the bottom one, you have monitor predictions in the background only. So you always can just test this model. Once you set it up as background only, what we will do is we will save the predictions for you to do analytics on it and feel more comfortable with it before you really deploy into production. Now, in this exercise, we are adding the language to the case form, and we added the language as a skill to influence the case routing using advanced work assignment or assignment workbench as we saw. Once this has been set up, you will say save and continue. And the last step is deploying the model. Before you do, you make sure that everything what you have done is being captured in this summary. And once you have done that, you will deploy. And that's it. From now on, every time that you create a case, the short description and the description will be taken in consideration to predict your language field. I'm going to stop here for any questions about language before I move to the next session.
Alexandra, no questions on language, but we did have a question regarding what we're referring to as CS. And in this case, CS is customer service management. So keep an eye out. Our first release of this is customer service management. We do, under Safe Harbor, expect additional areas to be supported with task intelligence. And then, Alexandra, as we're on the model page, this may be a good opportunity to maybe talk a little bit about what's unique to task intelligence, because the question came in, what are some areas that are new in relation to predictive intelligence, which is the solution that came out several years ago with classification?
So the greatest thing about the task intelligence admin console is that now there is not a preset definitions, right? Now what we have is the opportunity to create on the fly whatever model we need for whatever fields we need. And we have a more interactive way to work on it, right? Before we have the solution definitions that we will be giving you out of the box to predict assignment, group, or category or priority. Now you have the freedom of selecting whatever you want and deploy it dynamically. I don't know, Banu or Andrea, do you want anything that you want to add?
Yeah, if I were to summarize it quickly, I would say, for me, the admin console kind of democratizes AI in the sense of now it's in the hands of a business analyst type of persona. They can light it up, have it monitoring in the background, and as it's becoming more effective and their confidence in it grows, then they can flip it to autofill. So to me, it kind of moves it from the domain of technical people that understand the language of AI, et cetera, and puts it in the hands of business stakeholders. That's the way I like to think about it.
Thank you. So if any other question, Marcel, or should we move on to categorization?
Sure, let's move on.
Okay. So for categorization, what we are going to do is let's edit the model so that we can skip the training part. I'm going to edit this model. You notice that now instead of 4 steps, we have 5. The first one is define your purpose. And this is a really important step. Here, what we are doing is deciding which data we are going to be using to train our models. And you have 2 options here. The top part is saying, do you want to use emails as a source of training your data? This option is really good for those customers that do any kind of customization when they are creating cases from email, and they are doing any kind of modification in the short description of the description. So they may prefer to go directly to the source, the sys email table or the email table, to be able to get the predictions. In the second part, in the bottom part, you have the opportunity to do training in cases or case extensions. And you notice that for both of them, there is now a checkbox, and that checkbox is include attachments. You can use attachments now as an input for your predictions. Again, if you have any questions, remember you can click explain here and you are going to have a complete help on it. Now, in our use case, we say that we are using just short description and description, so no need to change anything here. Then you go to train your model. The first step is you will put a name in your model. Once that name has been set, you cannot change it. That is the reason for why I cannot change it here, because we are editing this model. Now, the second step is if you want to train your data, you can set up any conditions. For example, you can say, I want to train my data in the last year of data that I have in my case table. Then you will select what are the output fields that you want to predict. We say that we wanted to predict priority and recommend category. So that is why we have these two fields here. Now, in this session, you can select the short description and description. They are going to be the inputs for the prediction. And finally, in the bottom, you have the number of records that are going to be used for that training. They match that condition. In my case, for example, because I didn't put any condition, is bringing the total amount of cases I have in this instance.
So, Alexandra, is there a minimum number of records that customers will need in their instance to train these models?
Yes, Andre. We out of the box we have 10,000 records as a default. But as you can see here, I have less than that, right? I have 1,000, and that is because we do have a property that is called mean training limit that we can set up if we want to lower that threshold. But we encourage you to have at least 10,000 records because the model is being trained in your data. So it's important that we have enough data to produce good predictions. Now, the step number 3 is assess your model. In the top part, you have the number of predictions that we did that could be done if you have deployed this model during this period of time. And this is just to give you an idea of how many predictions so that you can do your own calculations. For example, if you say every prediction is saving me 10 seconds, if you multiply those 10 seconds for the number of predictions that we are presenting you, you may have a rough idea of how much time this model could have saved if we have deployed during a period of time. In the bottom part, we do have kind of like an overview of how each of the fields has performed during that predictions. So you see here, we are saying that the same as the agent is 100%, and this is just because we have prefabricated data with 1,000 cases. This won't be the case in your real life, but you will have what is the percentage of predictions that were the same as an agent, what were different, and which predictions were skipped. For any questions, we have the help, so it will explain you exactly why. But remember, with categorization, we are training from your data, so we do have a way to compare how our predictions execute versus what the reality on your data is. So you always can go to the view samples results, and you will be able to see that. So if you are curious about one of the cases, you can click, you can see the description and short description, just like we did in language. You can see what was the option that the agent chose, what was what we predicted, and we will let you know the comparison, if it was the same or it was different. Again, all this is for you to feel comfortable with those predictions. Once you have done that, you can go now to set your preference. Just like in language, we can run this in background and nothing will happen. But if you want influence, if you want to save your prediction, now you have some options. Remember that we say we want to recommend category. So here is where you can say, I want to recommend. I don't want that being saved directly to my case form or my case. We just want to recommend it to the agent for them to take the decision. If we want to pre-fill, then we can just say pre-fill. If in any moment of those predictions you are not feeling comfortable with one of them, you always can disable that field, and we won't do the predictions over that field.
So Alexandra, let's say that you're, in addition to category and priority, let's say that you're predicting a field like assignment group as an example. Would there be a handshake between the prediction and AWA routing? Like, can you maybe explain how that may or may not work?
So Advanced work as we are not integrated out of the box with advanced work assignment, you will have to add that integration. But yes, we can use category, the fields that we are predicting with categorization, we can use it as routing. And the way that you will do that is, in our case, we have a field that is called the prediction status. That prediction status is telling you when the predictions has been completed. So by adding that to your queue in your advanced work assignment, you will be able to hold the case until the predictions are done. Thank you for the question, Andre.
Okay.
Now, once you have set up your preferences, you can deploy your model. Again, just like in language, you have a summary of everything, and you will be able just to click deploy, and the predictions will be ready for you to do. Before I just give you a glance of sentiment, do you have any questions in categorization? Okay.
No questions? Yeah. We do have a question on a little bit on the model training and running. So the question is, do the models sit within ServiceNow or the external to ServiceNow? I'm happy to take that one, or Andre Banu or Alexandra.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Marcel. But as far as I know, the training happens in the ServiceNow data center, whichever data center you're located in. And I believe once the model is trained, then your specific, the customer specific model is then pushed back to the instance, but I could be wrong. That's the extent to which I know.
Yeah, correct. It's all within the ServiceNow infrastructure. So it goes from your instance to the prediction server. So no risk of leaving ServiceNow related infrastructure there.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect. So now for sentiment, you will notice is pretty much the same than language. The only thing is here you can say, do I want to predict sentiment for all cases, or do I want to predict sentiment for just case types? So in this one, you have the option to say, I just want predict sentiments for order case, if that is the scenario that you want to cover. Then it becomes pretty similar to language. We will test your model. You can have up to 100 cases that will be showing you what sentiments is being predicted. Then we will assess the model. So now you can see here, for example, why this case was negative or neutral, just like in language. Once you feel comfortable with it, you can come to set your preference. And in this case, it's a little bit more simple. Is, do you want your sentiment being saved to the case? Do you want to run it in background? And finally, we will deploy the model. So that is about it, about the setting up of these models in task intelligence. I want to give just a brief glance of the analytics, because it's important, right? We have these models already deployed. They are already doing predictions. But how I feel about those predictions, it is, you can come here and click View All Metrics. So when you go to View All Metrics, what it's going to be doing is it's going to be presenting you with these charts where you can see what are the predictions that has been done for each of the models. You can see the MTTR. And more importantly, in the bottom, you can see how many predictions the agent has accepted and how many predictions the agent has replaced. That is because every time that the agent closes the case, we capture that, that change. If they were not comfortable with the prediction, we capture that as a feedback to be able to display it to you. And with that, I conclude the presentation. I'm not sure if there are any other questions.
Yeah, Alexandra, at this time, the only question is under Safe Harbor is task intelligence, the future predictive intelligence for ITSM HRSD. The answer is yes, we are expecting additional capabilities to be shipped in subsequent releases. But the first version of that is the task intelligence you see today. So we have that available for customer service management, You can use that with document intelligence, which we've had previously recorded webinars on that. So feel free to check those out. And at this time, we'll take any additional questions and conclude the presentation for today. So if anyone has anything else, please type it in the chat.
And while we're waiting for questions in the chat, I'll just call out a call to action here, which is to get you guys to go and download Task Intelligence from the ServiceNow store and light up whatever feature, whether you're talking about sentiment analysis, categorization, document intelligence, etc., and give it a go. Because as you saw in the demonstration, you don't have to deploy it immediately into production. You can just have it run in the background, see what potential impact it could have to your organization, and incrementally light it up as required. So that's our call to action for you folks.
Great. Thanks everyone for attending. Thanks for your questions, your participation, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.